Okay, I think it's time for a new journey. This is a piece of equipment that was given to me by a friend many years ago. It was a very large piece of industrial equipment, and this, for the longest time, was all I knew. Big Joe Industrial Tool Corp. I'm in the Houston area. Katie's not too far from where I currently live. I tried and looked this thing up as best I could because it was, let's say, it had a lot of potential, but it was missing a lot of parts. When I got it, it was a big frame with a motor and it had nothing but a sanding disc on it. And it is a lathe-based multi-tool. Some of you might already know what this is. Some of you might have an idea what it might be. But all I knew was that it was a clone, and forgive all the moving around, I'm freehanding this, a clone of a very popular lathing tool. And that supposedly all the pieces of equipment for that one would fit on this, but nobody in any of the forums I could manage referencing Big Joe ever specified what that company was. Perhaps it was removed by that company. I don't know. Anyway, for me, for the longest time, all it was a very big metal stand that held some tools and had a sanding disc on it that was great because it was a very large diameter sanding disc, worked very well for me. But the speed control didn't work all that well. It would stick. Anyway, it slowly died and eventually didn't move at all anymore because the speed controller had completely broken. So it sat that way for a while until one day I decided, this is a nice frame and it's really, I'm right now just using it to hold sanding equipment. Then I took this off and started taking it apart to try and scrap it, see what I could get out of it. Well, the pieces sat on my shelf for more than a year again. Once I had the parts apart, I realized what it was that had broken. This is the speed controller. This is the front. There was a knob attached to that. There was a wheel gear there, and the frame for it broke. This actuator arm pulled a pulled these apart and adjusted the diameters so that we could adjust speed. Fantastic design. These are really durable. I love this thing. It worked very well. It's nice to have the advancement on the sander, but I always wanted to do more with it. However, when it broke, it was more or less a dead thing for me. When I was posting a video recently, I had somebody make a comment, hey, I'll buy that lathe in the background. At the time, all they could see was a section of this, and they couldn't tell that the motor wasn't even on it. I responded, thanks, it was a gift, it never worked, it's missing parts, blah, 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 broken. Shortly after that, I decided I was going to, because I'm trying to do more work, do nicer work, have a cleaner shop, rebuild a shelf that was on the wall back there above that ledge where you had a foot to stand and then you'd fall off of it. It's very impractical. It was higher than it should have been for a working surface anyway. So I pulled the shelf off the wall and I decided I'm going to, get rid of this thing. It's not the best table and it doesn't work anymore. Which leads to this shelf being on this stand that I built and a video on that. And this is the other sander that I had recently acquired and I wanted to be able to put on that as well from the same guy who gave me this. He didn't have space to keep any of the tools anymore. I was about to scrap it, as I said, and it was finally that last-ditch effort. Well, let's see what we can do. I have tried this several times. I did an image recognition on this part, specifically this part, and it turned back something for the first time ever to a gentleman who operates a website selling refurbished parts, repaired parts for ShopSmiths. First time I knew what the name was. You can also send him the unit and he will refurbish it, rebuild it 30% faster, 30% quieter. Anyway, this is something he sells as a unit. It looks, from pictures, to be exactly what I need. I order it. At this point, it's the first money I have ever spent on this device, aside from sandpaper. So I get it in, and I'm like, okay, it's different. Mine doesn't have a spring that comes on the ShopSmith here to stop the wheel from rattling. This one doesn't have some springs that go on the back that, honestly, facilitate the installation of it. It holds this thing in place until you can get your screws in place. Then I realized that even if I could have, because I asked him about exchanging it's a different tooth design between the ShopSmith and the clone. So I had to get a whole new unit, and at that point then I realized, oh wait a second, this is also different. This one has teeth on the front. The whole worm gear is machined as one piece and is held in with spring clips from the back. This one is held in from a spring clip from the front, and the gearing is on the wheel. I imagine this one is probably cheaper to make than this one. I don't know, maybe this one's just not as durable, but apparently this is what they did at the time. So I had to replace it all, and now I'm going to start the process of reassembling this. If I hadn't already mentioned this, I took it apart for scrap. I didn't take pictures. I have the nuts and bolts, and I figured out which three hold this on, and now I've got to figure out how to put it together. So while I'm here, I'm going to point out a couple of things for anybody else who ever had one of these clones. Yes, they did such a wonderful job. Not every hole here was used. Apparently they drilled some holes that didn't line up with the bottom half, and then they had to put some new ones on there because, as I said, you know, see 3 holes, see 5, what is that? They also had nuts and bolts on the inside to hold it together because, you know, clearly it was so well done. It does work very well. It is a clone. They cut corners in some places, changed some things. There's no switch here, never was. But this is the beginning of my journey. I'm going to be reassembling this, and I don't know what I'm going to do to mark this because I'm not trying to convince people it's a ShopSmith. It's definitely not, but at this point, that's the only thing that will work with this. And I hope that this is informative to anybody else who might have some of these clones. If they're probably not like me, clueless as to what it is that they have, or what it is that they need to get parts for. I doubt that. These days it's so easy to find, but like I said, I've had this for a while and I couldn't figure it out. So I'm gonna be doing some videos of me reassembling this, trying to get it back together and back on the frame, and see if I can get it at least working as the sander I had, and then possibly start tracking down the other bits and pieces to get, you know, the lathe, which is the thing I'm the most interested in, going. And then realizing that, oh wow, they have all kinds of other things, including bandsaw attachments. But apparently the drill press is probably one of the best uses of it, based on a video I've watched. Honestly, it was one of the coolest parts that I thought was I could stand this thing up and use it as a drill press, either horizontal, vertical, or otherwise. But I want to play around with wood cutting and a lathe. So I'm going to post this, and then I'll come back with a video, and I hope this stirs some interest, because the next video will be, you know, me moving through the process of putting this together.